Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be going over the panel B side of Monark. In here, we have some settings that can change the sound of Monark, actually quite largely, surprisingly. And we also have some that would adjust the behavior of the way Monark reacts to the way you play. So let's go ahead and just start at the top and work our way down. So over here we have our settings. The first setting is based on the original instrument. So it would behave in sound as the reference instrument would behave in sound, while the other two are just based on different playing styles. And you see they alter the behavior of it. So this actually alters the sound of it too. So kind of an important note to have. They are also saved with the snapshots. So as you move through here, you will notice that your settings may occasionally change. You can prevent this if you have it the way you want it by going to ignore snapshot change, and then it will ignore them. This may alter the sound of some of the snapshots though. So you want to be careful about that. We also have this edit that just completely removes your ability to do it. And they have this, oh, look at that, it's like the back of an instrument. Ha ha ha. So we have that as an option as well. Anytime you make changes here, you can also simply hit reset to reset them. We've already talked about the keyboard and legato settings over here, and we've already talked about the glide ramp functions over here, and the video on the control panel, the control button, the control whatever. You see this one, the control setting. So let's go ahead and move over to pitch bend. None of these, now this one isn't like anything crazy, but it may have an important meaning to you based on how you interact with the pitch bend knob. So if you're playing live, chances are you're going to want to touch this thing. And as you move it up and down, you may expect it to behave a certain way. So right now we have this curve setting, and this basically says if we go to a linear or a line setting, it says whenever we move, it's going to apply an equal amount of pitch bend as we move across here. So it's going to pitch bend it by a particular amount, and that amount will remain consistent across the whole movement. But if we move it up to a curve, we will notice that at the beginning here, we will have a lot more change, and then we will not receive so much change near the middle. So this will introduce a lot of change, but as we reach the middle, less pitch will actually be bent. And as we reach the other extreme, we will actually get a lot more pitch bend again. So we see here we have a lot more pitch bend. So if you're one of those people who's playing and then you reach over and quickly just sort of tap on it and expect a particular amount of pitch bend range, you can fine tune this knob right here to fix that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next setting. That is range. So in range, you have this ability to increase or decrease the range of the pitch bend. So if you want more, you can simply increase the range. I believe you can increase it by as much as 2 semitones. So that's pretty cool. Next up, we have the mod wheel settings. So that's the pitch bend wheel. Like, it's not that crazy. Over here, we have the mod settings. We have a low curve, and then we have these curves consistent with the octaves. So you can actually set a separate behavior for the LFO. Anytime LFO, an oscillator is in the low mode, well, in this case, oscillator 3, because that's the oscillator going to this one. So it only matters with oscillator 3. So when it's in the LFO mode versus when it's going to be modulating at an audio rate. So you can actually set a different amount here. A different curve for the two. So different settings for each one. You see we have a different to pitch and different to cutoff. So kind of cool. And we can set here, we can set similar things with the curve. So as we move our modulation up, will it apply a linear setting where it applies an equal change across, or you'll probably be expecting something a little more logarithmic where it increases exponentially as we move up. As we move our modulation up. So you can come here and set it up, because in LFO, you're probably going to be adding vibrato, and that's a completely different beast than when you're adding modulation. So you may come in here and adjust your curves. Most people probably just run with what they're given, but maybe you're really particular about the way things are set up on your snapshots. So let's go ahead and go to the next setting. This is pitch. So as we get here with 2 pitch and 2 cutoff, this just sets the depth that it can actually modulate that parameter. So I really quick want to restate this too. So basically you move your knob up on this curve, and here not so much change. As we get up here and we move our knob up more, a lot more, and then as I said, its maximum value, like a ton more change compared to the amount of change that happened in this little region right here. So that's the same deal. So it's like not so much, not so much, and then more, and then like a freaking crap ton right there. And so that could be important to you. This setting down here, the 2 pitch, again sets the depth. So if I were to like set this up, I'm basically saying, oh, when you're modulating pitch specifically in the low setting, because this is on the low column, it's going to be saying modulate it by a freaking ton. So we know that it's going to be oscillating back and forth. When it's at its maximum value, it's going to change it a lot. When it's its minimum value, it's going to change it a lot as well. But as we take this down, when it's at its maximum value and minimum value, it's not going to change it very much. It's going to be very little fluctuation. This could be important if we're going to be doing some sort of vibrato. So let's go ahead and look at 2 pitch and go ahead and just do it 1 with max. Now let's go ahead and take this value down to its minimum. So you see it's been substantially reduced in depth. So now let's go ahead and go over to the cutoff, and the same exact thing applies. So we can modulate frequency or we can modulate cutoff. And so right now it's going to make it go back and forth, up and down, right? And then we can change the depth by altering this. And this is on our mod wheel here. And it's specifically on the low setting because that's the setting that our oscillator 3 is on right now. It's on low. So let's go ahead and move it. And so you see not so much change, way more change. And that's all that these are. And with modulation, entirely different beasts. You may want to augment these things. I tend to leave them alone and run with what I'm given. But occasionally I may come in here and be like, I just need this to be a little more this way. And so I'll come in here and make the changes that I think are necessary. Okay, cool. Next up, we have key tracking and octave detuning. This basically sets the amount that this can happen at. I would leave key tracking alone because like it's key tracking. You generally want that to be 100% on. You don't want it to be relative or anything. And you have abilities to set ratios in here by just simply activating particular knobs. But maybe you're going after oscillator 3 and want to affect the key tracking of that. Well, then you can do that. You also have the octave detuning. So we have drift amount and we have octave detuning. So our octaves will always tend to be, because of the modeling they have, they will have a little bit of detuning, but then we also have drift, which all of them will drift to some amount, but this is like on the individual octave level. And so you can affect how much that takes place. Maybe you want it away because you could get beating and stuff. So maybe you don't want that there at all. So if we were to play a sound where that is a big deal, let's turn off the modulation so we can hear this. And we're going to turn on 2 waveforms at a value of 16, and we'll make them both saw waves, right? So they should be identical. And right now they have no octave detuning, and so we'll look at that. Now let's turn on octave detuning. So you can hear how it changed in character. You can even see it visually. So let's go ahead and do that one more time. So that's that. And we also have our drift amount playing a role here too. So let's take that away. So that's all just the octave detuning, because these, they form a relationship, just these subtle itsy bitsy changes, but it's responsible for a lot of the warmth. Let's take it away though. So just an interesting thing to keep note of and be aware of is that that is a thing that you have control over. So yeah, that's that. It's not like a crazy amount of change, but it's just like a small subtle thing to change the individual octaves tunings. Next up, we have an oscillator set. Each oscillator actually receives its own individual key tracking, which is pretty cool. So each oscillator will receive, if you turned on key tracking, and like that, and you wanted to, or over here you said, oh yeah, key track, woohoo. Anytime you have key tracking, and each oscillator will actually receive a different amount of key tracking, so the filter will be moved slightly differently relative to each one, causing shifts in brightness and tonality. It's one of those subtle things they included. And then all the ABC does is alter which one gets, I believe A is the original instrument, and then B and C give perfectly linear tracking to one of them. I believe C gives it to 3 and B gives it to 1. I don't know. You can go check it out in the manual, but it does make quite a large difference if you begin to employ key tracking. So let's say right now, right, that's our sound. So let's go ahead and turn that on. Oh, I turned on the play button here. So, right, that's what that is like. But let's go ahead and change it now to C. That's a quite drastic change just for like the key tracking. So that's the difference, just key tracking. Let's try B. And then A, which again is, I believe, the original, the reference instrument model. And as we move through patches and things, these sorts of settings can really begin to mess with things. And then lastly, we have the oscillator 3 frequency low plus no key tracking setting. It's a very specific name, but they kind of had to be. So when oscillator 3 does not have key tracking on, we're going to assume that it's being used for vibrato. You're going to be adding vibrato to your sound. And so this here allows you to set a minimum and maximum value. Just fine tune the range of what the vibrato that can occur. And so that's where you would set up something like this. I'm more prone to change things on the actual oscillator, but you can change, like when you move this around and stuff, you can change it in the back panel as a behavior. And then over here we have filter, and then we have linear versus MM. And this changes the behavior of how resonance is distributed throughout the frequency range. And you might be going, what are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about when you move the cutoff knob, is the resonance in the low range distributed evenly as it is in the high range? Maybe, maybe not. The MM is referenced to the original instrument. So what the original instrument would do under particular circumstances, the one they were modeling, whereas linear will distribute it evenly across the whole range. Like it will respond the same. So that's what the differences are there. So this can sound quite different with particular patches too, especially if you're using a filter envelope of some kind. So if you're moving it up and down, had some resonance. Now let's go ahead and change it. That's linear. Let's change it to the modeled version. I just realized just right now that MM probably stands for mini moog. Anyways, moving on. I can't believe that didn't occur to me. And then we have global, which here we have leakage and drift amount. Maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe it stands for something else, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Drop your thoughts in the comment. I can't believe I just thought of that. And then finally we have our leakage and our drift amount. We already talked about this. So octave detuning is, changing the tuning of the various octaves of the various oscillators, right there. Whereas we have our global amount. So we're able to change the drift amount globally, which is pretty cool. And we're also able to change the leakage. So there are some presets that have pretty horrendous amounts of leakage just going on. If we just scroll through. Nah, I'm not going to cross any. I'm not going to go searching. Oh, it's because the leakage is off. Let's turn that on. See, there's some. It's just back there in the background. Sometimes you're not going to want this, but it's sort of an authentic part of the sound. That's just like how extreme they went to on the modeling side of things. You can put a gate on it and treat it, as you would as if it were the real thing. So they give you those options as well, or you could just turn it off. I'm not sure if you can hear that too over YouTube, but I assure you there's a sound coming out of this leakage thing on this particular preset. And if we hit reset, bam, it's all back to where it was. And again, if we go through presets, when they're made together, I'm assuming they probably make them in sessions, so they tend to sit together. But if we were to, let's do a little more serious jumping around. See, this one uses setting 2. The other one was using setting 3. And on classic, that one uses in the house uses setting 1. And so, as we've seen, this can change the sound quite drastically. So it makes sense that the settings would jump around as we switch snapshots. So that's panel B. That's some of the behaviors you can get out of it. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.